Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Xeric Timeline Retrograde Automatic. This watch is available from Kickstarter.com for $699, which is €664. The watch is a limited edition of 999 numbered pieces. So firstly, let's look at the box that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the specifications of the piece. So the watch comes in a hard-shell travel case which is housed inside a cardboard box, and the cardboard box is protected in shipping by this black cardboard sleeve which is branded with Xeric's logo and also brand emblem. So one removes the sleeve, and as you can see on the lid to the cardboard box is also branded with the Xeric emblem and Xeric brand logo. So one removes the lid to the box, and I'll take out the hard-shell travel case and show it to you. So it's made from textured vinyl which has a nice finish to it, flawless stitching around the perimeter, and there's also a strap securing both halves of it, and that's secured by a brass popper which is embossed with Xeric repeated 3 times, and in the centre the Xeric brand emblem. So I like the way both halves fold out. The interior is fully upholstered with a contrasting grey velour fabric to a good standard, and in the base there's also an embossed Xeric emblem, so good quality presentation. It's very aesthetically pleasing. The watch sits inside on this padded pillow cushion which is also upholstered to a good standard with contrasting grey velour fabric. So good snug fit inside the hard-shell travel case, good presentation, good design, and I think it's very aesthetically pleasing. So Xeric deserve credit. This is an example to other mid-tier micro brands at the price point of €664 of how to get presentation correct. With regards to the items, you only get this plastic warranty card. On the reverse, there's a space to fill in the model number, limited edition number, because this is a limited edition of 999 numbered pieces. Each of the exhibition case backs are engraved with a unique number, the date of purchase and the retailer. Now, it doesn't come with an owner's instruction manual in the form of a booklet, but you can visit the website xeric.com/manuals, and that will give you the owner's instruction manual online, detailing the operation of the movement used, which is the Xeric Caliber X5.1 automatic, which is based upon the Miyota Caliber 9015. Now I'm pleased to report the watch is covered by a 2-year international warranty, which is very good, and Xeric deserve full credit for this because often mid-tier micro brands only cover their watches with a 12-month warranty. To get 2 years of warranty is very good. So with regards to the specifications of the piece, we have a 38mm case diameter, we have a lug-to-lug measurement of 44mm, a thickness of 12.9mm. The integrated bracelet tapers at the widest point from 23.5mm at the integrated lugs down to 18mm at the 2-button push clasp. The 2-button push clasp is solid mill 316L grade stainless steel, brush satin finish to a beautiful lustre, and engraved with the Xeric emblem and also Xeric logo to a good standard. Brush satin finishing has a nice fine grained finish to it, and that complements the mirror polishing to the flanks, but however I'm going to be critical of it because it's a very light gauge of 316L grade stainless steel. I would like to see Xeric upgrade this to a heavier gauge and also lengthen the clasp. They could upgrade it to a micro adjustment clasp, or at the very minimum they need to lengthen it and add more micro adjustment holes, because it only has the minimum 2 micro adjustment holes in the flanks, and that's not really enough. It really needs 5 or 6. The problem with the oyster style bracelet is there are no half links on the 6 and the 12 o'clock side, and adding or subtracting one full link often doesn't give the correct fit. The bracelet will either be slightly too tight or too loose, but by having half links either side of the clasp, that negates the problem because it means that you can get the perfect fit in the absence of a micro adjustment clasp or a clasp with 5 or 6 holes in the flanks. So they really need to upgrade the clasp to a micro adjustment clasp, or add a longer clasp with 5 or 6 holes, or simply add half links to the oyster style bracelet to refine the fit. We have a flat sapphire crystal with clear AR coating on the underside, and the clear anti-reflective coating does an outstanding job of reducing the glare and the highly reflective nature of the metallic dial. So on the dial we have 2 scales. On the right hand side you can see there's a 60-minute scale for the minutes, and the silver section, which is sunburst finished, has a 12-hour scale for the hour hand. So this has 2 flyback complications, and one for the minute hand, it flies back after 60 minutes back to 0, and one for the hour hand, it resets every 12 hours. So 12 PM and 12 AM it flies back to 12 and restarts again, which I'll demonstrate. Nice textured finish to the dial. I like on the left hand side we have concentric circles and an applied Xeric brand emblem and logo, which is very aesthetically pleasing. Nice silver scale for the 12-hour scale. Applied indices, which are loomed with BGW9 for the hours. And on the right hand side, we've got the minute scale running from 0 to 60 minutes, and these horizontal lines are clearly legible with the minute ticks. The only negative to this being a timeline retrograde automatic is there is no second hand. It's a two-hand watch, so we only have the minute hand and the hour hand. There is no second hand. Some collectors might prefer if this had a second hand, but of course with a retrograde it's not possible to have a second hand ticking around the dial at 60 seconds. So on the right hand side we also have a framed date complication with a circular silver frame. I think this is a mistake because the dial is very deep and the date wheel is sunk very deep beneath the dial, and that creates a permanent shadow. It does have an inverted Cyclops magnifier, but it only provides 1.5 times magnification, which is negligible. Really, to be beneficial, the Cyclops magnifier, which is inverted, needs to have 2.5 times magnification, because you can see the Arabic numeral on the dates wheel isn't magnified enough. 2.5 times is optimum, 1.5 just isn't enough. The problem with the silver framing with the silver circle is it adds a shadow, and although it does look aesthetically pleasing, it creates a shadow around the Arabic numerals on the date wheel, and that means that it's difficult to read. There's not a very good contrast between the black Arabic numerals and the white date wheel. So they could enlarge the hole in the dial for the date wheel, and that would improve it. That would make it easier to read. Also, they could increase the magnification from 1.5 times to 2.5 times respectively. With regards to the crown, it's solid 316L grade stainless steel, recessed partially in the crown guards, which are correctly proportioned, and the coin edge teeth have a nice chamfer, so it's deburred very well, no sharp tips to the teeth, and it's also embossed with the Xeric brand emblem, which has a matte bead blasted background and contrasting mirror polished emblem, so the finishing is very good. Proportion of the crown is very good, it's grippy and tactile, doesn't feel sharp. So push-pull crown provides an effective hermetic seal to 50 meters, which is very good for a daily wear piece. Perfectly acceptable to use a push-pull crown rather than a screw-down crown. So let's test the execution. Now, in the closed position, as it's a manual wind automatic, you can manually wind it to its maximum 42-hour power reserve. So this uses the Xeric Caliber X5.1 automatic, which is a modified Miyota Caliber 9015. So you can manually wind it, and it also has a rotor, so you can automatically wind it, but the rotor is unidirectional, only winds anti-clockwise. That's something to bear in mind. But the manual winding feels smooth, and the benefit of it having a push-pull crown is you don't need to unscrew the crown in order to manually wind it. You can simply manually wind it in the closed position. Feels nice and smooth. You can feel the tension in the mainspring gradually building up to its maximum 42 hours. Pulling it out to the first click position is the quick set date complication. So when you rotate the crown clockwise, you can see the date complication clicks over to the next day of the month. The single and the double Arabic numerals align correctly. They're not too far to the left or too far to the right of the circular framed dates window. But however, it's just a shame that there's a permanent shadow around it due to the depth of the date window, the thickness of the dial, and also this silver ring, which is the framing around it. So they could delete the silver ring, and that would reduce the shadow, and also use a thinner dial, and that would make the date wheel closer to both the Cyclops magnifier and also the date at the underside of the sapphire crystal, so that would make it easier to read. So it does click over with a nice positive click. It feels lighter than a Seiko NH35A, which has a heavier clicking to the quickset complication. The 9015, which this is based upon, has a lighter quickset, but it does feel very good. The alignment is correct, it's not too high or too low, and the Arabic numerals aren't too far to the left or the right. Now, pulling it out to the second click position hacks the movement, but there isn't a second hand, so you can't see it's hacked. But I'm now going to demonstrate the flyback, both for the minute flyback, which is a 60-minute flyback, and also the hour flyback, which is a 12-hour flyback. So, when you rotate the crown clockwise to set the time, you can see the minute hand moves down the 12-hour scale to the bottom. And when it gets to the bottom, you can see it flies back, as you can see. And you can also rotate it anti-clockwise, and it does the same. It moves all the way down to the bottom of the scale, and when it gets to 12 hours, you can see the minute hand, which is at 60 minutes, will fly back, as you can see. Now, when the hour hand, which is silver, gets to the bottom of the 12-hour scale, you'll see that this 12-hour hand also flies back to the start again. So there are two flyback complications, one for the minute hand, which runs on this blue 60-minute scale on the right of the dial, and the silver scale is the 12-hour scale, as you can see. So every time it reaches 60 minutes, it's just coming up to it now. If you look at the minute hand coming up to 60 at the bottom of the dial, it flies back to 0 minutes again. The hour hand runs through the 12 hours as the minute hand cycles through and flies back 60 to 0 every time. Now, the hour hand is now coming to 12 hours at the bottom of the silver scale on the left of the dial, and you'll see it will fly back again. So, both the hour flyback and the minute flyback work correctly. So it's very good. You can rotate the crown both clockwise and anti-clockwise, as you can see, but in order to set the time, you need to rotate the crown anti-clockwise, because that will cycle the minute hand through the 60 minutes and cause it to fly back, and that will also advance the hour hand through the 12 hours. So it works very well, and it's also very aesthetically pleasing to see it fly back, both the minute hand and also the hour hand, as you can see. Works very well. The only negative is the lack of a second hand. If you like three-hand watches and you like to see the second hand to hack a movement and set the time precisely to the second, it's not possible to do that because we don't have a second hand, but the design of it, the timeline retrograde, is very aesthetically pleasing. I like the two scales. The white minute ticks on the 60-minute scale are clearly legible. Proportion of the minute hand is good, and also they've made the correct decision by making the minute and the hour hand, which are baton hands, different colours, silver and blue respectively, because you can immediately tell when you're looking at the retrograde scale which is the minute hand and which is the hour hand, because they are similar lengths and similar proportions, but you quickly become accustomed to looking at the silver hand for the hours and the blue hand for the minutes. So very aesthetically pleasing, nice textured finish to the dial. I like the 3D effect of it, the applied indices. The only negative really is the legibility of the date complication because of the shadow and the depth of the dial, but the minutes and the hours are very easy to read, and you do quickly become accustomed to looking at the silver hand for the hours and the minute hand in blue. So pushing the crown back in restarts the movement, and it continues to run at 4 Hz, but you can't see that it's running because there is no second hand. So feels good to manually wind. The hacking works well, the time setting works well, and also the hour and flyback complications work well as the quick set date. So let's look at the bracelet. Integrated end links, as you can see. Now, they do articulate smoothly, they don't feel stiff or kink, which is good. However, we do have some play, so there's room for improvement with regards to the quality control, builds quality and tolerances. There's a poor interference fit, The hole is slightly too large and the pin is undersized, and the problem is, as you can see, there's longitudinal, lateral, side-to-side, up and down play in every single direction. One can be magnanimous about this kind of poor tolerances on a piece costing below €100. That's to be expected, but this is a mid-tier piece costing €664. It's wholly unacceptable to have this amount of play in the integrated end links. Now, another cost-cutting measure which is disappointing is the use of push pins in the Oyster style bracelet rather than screw pins. At this mid-tier price point of €664, one would expect to see screw pins rather than push pins. On a positive note, the quality of the mirror polishing to the centre links is very good. The quality of the brush satin finishing to the outer links is also very good. Beautiful lustre to the longitudinal satin finishing. And that contrasts with the flawless mirror polishing to the flanks. No sharp edges to the top edge or the lower edge of the Oyster style bracelet, which is good. It articulates freely, doesn't have any stiff links, which is good. But the negative is it rattles, as you can see. Lateral, side to side, longitudinal, up and down play. Every single one of these push pin links in the Oyster style bracelet has excessive play. This is the negative of not using screw pins, because they could easily tighten up the tolerances by replacing the push pins used with screw pins. The problem with push pins is the bracelet is sloppy and it rattles. On a positive note, it doesn't pull arm hairs, so let's check the other side for continuity. Again, the integrated end link articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, so that's the positive, but poor quality control, builds quality and tolerances, because we have lateral, side to side, up and down and longitudinal play in every single direction. One can be magnanimous below €100, as I've detailed, but not at the mid-tier price point of €664. This is wholly unacceptable. It rattles. Now, again, sloppy bracelet. because push pins in the oyster style links, as you can see, and the cumulative effect across the length of the bracelet is it is sloppy and it rattles. Needless to say, it articulates freely due to the excessive play, but it is disappointing to see push pins used and disappointing to see a sloppy bracelet. No sharp edges to the top edge or the low edge of the flanks, doesn't pull arm hairs, mirror polishing is good, brushed satin finishing is good, but they just need to tighten up the tolerances. The holes are too large and the push pins are undersized, and of course then you get this sloppy bracelet which rattles. Let's look at the clasp. Solid mill 316L grade stainless steel clasp, 2 button push triggers, but the gauge is too light. Again, this is the kind of clasp one would expect on a €100 Chinese made low tier piece from AliExpress. This is a mid tier piece costing €664. This isn't good enough. 2 button push triggers have a light spring loaded action, open smoothly. Solid mill 316L grade stainless steel internals, as one would expect, brushed satin finishing to the top side, underside and flanks, but they've made a fundamental error. They've engraved stainless steel upside down. Now, just to clarify why it's upside down. Normally, collectors take a piece off the wrist like so, and then they turn it around like this, press the 2 button push triggers and open the clasp right to left. You do not open the clasp upside down, left to right, as you can see. So, when you open it, you can see stainless steel is engraved upside down. They simply need to invert it. They need to engrave it the right way up. This is an embarrassing mistake. Unfortunately, that's not the only problem. Let's check the hinge pins. As you can see, left-hand hinge pin has excessive play. This is poor quality tolerances. The hole is too large. The pin is too undersized, as you can see. Lateral, side to side, longitudinal, up and down play. Now, needless to say, it articulates freely. It doesn't feel stiff or kink because there is too much play. But there's play in every direction and it rattles. Let's check the center hinge pin. This is very bad. So just bear with me. I'll put my glove behind it because I want you to see it with the camera focused. Look at the amount of play. This is the kind of play one would expect with a low tier piece from AliExpress, a Chinese made watch below €100. The amount of side to side play is 1mm. It clicks. It's absolutely dreadful. Needless to say, it articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, but it clicks. It's got a loud audible click. It's also got side to side, lateral, up and down play, as well as the side to side, but the side to side play is the biggest concern. Just bear with me, I'll get the camera to focus. Look at the amount of play. This is on a mid-tier piece costing €664. Wholly unacceptable. Finally, let's check the right-hand pin. It rattles. Lateral, side to side, up and down, play in every single direction. Poor quality tolerances, as you can see, and it clicks. The cumulative effect is all 3 hinge pins have excessive play. Left, centre and right, and the worst one is the centre one. I'll just put my glove behind it again. You can see the amount of play. We're looking at 1mm. Just look at that with the camera focused. 1mm of play on a mid-tier piece costing €664. Poor quality control, build quality and tolerances wholly unacceptable. My concern is the long-term durability, because when you have an undersized pin in an elongated hole, the riveted ends eventually wear off, or alternatively the pin just shears and snaps because of excessive shear load. This is wholly unacceptable. This is the kind of poor quality solid mill clasp one would expect on a Chinese made piece below €100, not a mid-tier piece costing $664. So clasp is light gauge as I've detailed, but on a positive note, there's no sharp edge to the undercut to the flanks, and the top edge and the low edge don't have any sharp edges, and the 4 corners have been deburred and chamfered very well. Nice mirror polished bevels to the edge, so it's been deburred and chamfered well. The brushed satin finishing and the mirror polishing is good, but the gauge is too light. Right, so let's look at the caseback. So, exhibition caseback. Now, if you look at the lower portion of it, you can see it says limited edition 000/999 because this is numbered. Every one of these Timeline Retrograde automatics has a unique number, one of 999 pieces. At the top it says Timeline Retrograde engraved. So, quality of the engraving is high definition, doesn't feel sharp, it's been polished very well. The metal portion of the exhibition caseback has been longitudinally brushed satin finished to a good standard, and the circumference of it is mirror polished with the specification engraved, so the mirror polishing to the edges is good. 4 flathead screws do a good job of securing the caseback. 50 meters of hermetic seal is acceptable for a daily wear piece. So the movement is decorated with milled stripes like Cotes de Genève, and also the rotor is signed with the Xeric emblem, which is good. It's good that they didn't just use the sterile Miyota 9015 rotor, which this is based upon, and I like the milled stripes on the bridges. It does add some interest. Now, the Exhibition Caseback is glazed with mineral crystal as a cost-cutting measure, but strictly speaking, one doesn't need sapphire crystal in the Exhibition Caseback because it's not an area that's prone to being scuffed and scratched, as per the sapphire crystal on the front of the piece. Clarity is good. Good to see an Exhibition Caseback showing off the movement, which they call the Xeric Caliber X5.1 because it's a modified Miyota 9015 with the Retrograde added to it. So, good movement, good to see it displayed. Nice flat profile to the Exhibition Caseback. It doesn't add significant thickness to the piece. This is only 12.9mm, which is very good. So I'll give you a wrist shot and you can see how it fits my 8-inch wrist. Now, I haven't sized the bracelet and I'm pleased to report it easily fits my 8-inch wrist. I can in fact slide an index finger underneath the bracelet and clasp at all times. Now, this is with the micro adjustment on the maximum of the two positions, so this will actually fit up to an 8.5-inch wrist with no problems whatsoever. There are enough removable links on the 6 o'clock and the 12 o'clock side to size this down to a minimum 6-inch wrist, so this will fit from a 6 up to an 8.5 maximum comfortably. Now, in terms of balance, this does not feel balanced. It feels like a very top-heavy piece. It's not a tall piece, it's 12.9, so the proportions are good in terms of the length of the case is 44, which is compact, so you would think it would fit a 6 to 7-inch wrist well, but the problem is not the height of it, the thickness, but it's the weight. This has a lot of heft. It is incredibly heavy for a 38mm head of the piece on an integrated bracelet. 161 grams is excessive. Now, it does have a long bracelet, so with a 6 to 7-inch wrist you're going to be removing 5 to 6 links. That will reduce the heft. Even with a 7 to 8-inch wrist you're going to be removing 3 or 4 oyster style links. That will reduce the heft down to circa 150 to 155 grams, but it still feels like a top heavy piece. It feels like a slab of 316L grade stainless steel on a very heavy integrated bracelet, because the bracelet is very wide, 23.5 at its widest point, tapering to 18. They've made a mistake here because this is only a 38mm head of the piece. It does not need such a wide, tapered, integrated bracelet. They could have used the industry standard 20 to 16. That would have reduced the heft of this piece by 15 to 20 grams, well below the sweet spot of 150 grams. Because of the meat on the bracelet having such a large taper, the links are very thick and wide. 23.5 down to 18 adds 15 to 20 grams to the heft of the piece, and this is already a heavy head of the piece due to the thickness. You can see the slab sides to the flanks. So 161 grams is a very heavy piece for 38. The bracelet has too much meat on it and it doesn't feel balanced because this is not a micro adjustment clasp. It doesn't feel very heavy. The gauge of the 316L grade stainless steel is very light. It feels like a pressed metal clasp rather than a solid mill clasp. And it's also very short. So the clasp feels very light. The bracelet feels very heavy because there's too much meat on the links, especially at the integrated lugs end. This is very wide, 23.5. So the bracelet feels too heavy, clasp feels too light, the head of the piece feels too heavy. So what you have is this top heavy effect. Feels like a slab of 316L grade stainless steel on a meaty bracelet with a very lightweight clasp. So constantly feels top heavy rather than feeling balanced between the head of the piece and the bracelet. They could correct this very easily by making the taper 20 to 16 and using a solid milled micro adjustment clasp which is longer and heavier, because a heavier clasp, thinner bracelet would better balance the head of the piece. Now, it is aesthetically pleasing. The AR coating does work very well. The legibility of the applied indices is good. The 12-hour scale is clearly legible. The printing is good quality. The black Arabic numerals are correctly proportioned and clearly legible for the 12 hours. The white 60-minute Arabic numerals and minute ticks are also clearly legible, and there's a nice metallic sheen to the dial, and I like the concentric circles on the left-hand portion of the dial, so it's got a nice 3D effect. The anodized blued hand for the minute hand has good legibility, and the silver matte finish to the hour hand also has good legibility. So legibility is good, with the exception of the date complication is poor due to the shadow and the depth of it having the inverted Cyclops magnifier with only 1.5 times. It's a very thick dial and I think they could improve upon it. Bezel is solid 316L grade stainless steel, flawless mirror polishing to it. Brush satin finishing to the flanks is very aesthetically pleasing, and the angular profile to the lugs also gives it a 1960s or 1970s aesthetic. So proportions of the head of the piece are good, just the bracelet is too wide and too much meat on it. Comfort level is poor, feel good factor is good, it does look good, but it just doesn't feel good. It just doesn't feel like it's going to be a comfortable piece to wear for long periods of time, such as 8 to 12 hours per day. So they really need to refine the proportions of the bracelet and improve the clasp. It is a very heavy piece, 161 grams. Right, so let's do a lume test and we'll see how the lume performs when it's charged up to the absolute maximum. So as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to the absolute peak. Right, so that's now fully charged, and as you can see, the minute scale is fully lumed. The minute ticks, which are 0 to 60, are clearly legible with BGW9, and they've also partially lumed the baton hands, the minute hand and the hour hand. So good to have some lume. One can clearly register the 60 minutes on the scale, but unfortunately the 12-hour scale is not lumed, as you can see. So we only have the minute ticks loomed, but we don't have the hour scale loomed. I think they could improve upon this. They could loom both of the scales, both the 12-hour scale on the left of the dial and the 60-minute right-hand scale on the right. In terms of the number of layers, we're clearly looking at 3 to 4 layers, which is a cost-cutting measure. This is not 5 to 6 layers of BGW9. I appreciate that with baton hands, there isn't a large area, a large plot. They're not as large as Mercedes hands or Snowflake hands, for example, so they don't allow for a large area of BGW9 to be applied, but nonetheless one can apply 5 to 6 to give it a good performance from the exciter. This is 3 to 4 because you can see the exciter on the 60-minute ticks is not glowing as brightly as it would do with 5 to 6, and also the baton hands are not glowing as brightly as they would do with 5 to 6. It's 3 to 4 layers. There is a cost-cutting measure here. One can be magnanimous about this kind of cost-cutting with a low-tier piece costing below €500, not on a mid-tier piece costing over €600. So this is disappointing. They really need to improve it, and also I think they should consider looming the 12-hour applied indices, not just the 60-minute ticks on the right-hand scale for the minutes. Now one can clearly differentiate between the baton minute hand and the baton hour hand. They are different lengths, as you can see. The minute hand is longer than the hour hand, so one can tell which is the minute and which is the hour. And of course the minute hand is registering on the minute ticks, the hour hand is shorter. They could improve upon it, and I think really it's disappointing at this price point to see cost cutting like this. Right, so let's discuss the movement use because it's my favourite aspect of the piece. So as I've detailed, Xeric call this the Caliber X5.1 Automatic, which is based upon a modified Miyota 9015, which is made in Japan. So the 9015 is a reliable, well-proven workhorse movement made in Japan. It has 24 joules. It runs at 28,800 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 4 Hz. It has hand winding and hacking, which use for complications, and a quick set date complication, which also works very well. 42-hour power reserve is very good. The stated accuracy of the 9015 is -10 to +30 seconds per day, so rather wide accuracy range. However, I'm pleased to report that Xeric are doing a good job of regulating the 9015s they're using. They're basing the Xeric Caliber X5.1 on. This one is running consistently at +6 seconds per day, which is actually within chronometer grade accuracy of -4 to +6. So +6 is well within the stated -10 to +30 seconds per day accuracy. It's very good. It's chronometer grade accurate. So they've done a good job of modifying it and adding the Retrograde to it, as you can see. So as I've detailed, we have 2 Retrogrades. We have one complication, which is a 60-minute flyback for the minute and a 12-hour flyback for the hour, respectively. They both work very well. When you rotate the crown anti-clockwise, both the minute 60-minute flyback works well, and when you rotate it through the 12 hours, you can see the hour hand also flies back correctly. 12 hours. So it works very well. They've done a very good job of modifying the 9015. They've made the correct choice of using a good quality caliber. The 9015 is a premium grade. It's a 9000 series of Miyota caliber. I like it. I like everything about it. The manual winding works well, hacking works well, time setting works well. It's reliable, build quality, quality control, tolerances are all very good, and no negatives to it whatsoever. So, lastly, I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch meet two criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price point. So, mid-tier piece, the price point is €664 or $699 US. I'm going to declare it okay quality and I'm going to declare it poor value because at €664 this faces stiff competition from other mid-tier microbands using the 9015. Now I appreciate this is a modified version and that does add significant production costs, but however there's too much evidence of cost cutting with regards to quality control builds quality of the integrated end links, the push pins in the bracelet which is sloppy, light gauge to the clasp and it only has 2 micro adjustments, and again the worst thing is the 1mm of side to side play in the solid mill clasp. Just bear with me, I'll get the camera to focus on it. This is wholly unacceptable. We're not looking at a below €100 low tier piece, a Chinese made AliExpress watch. This is a mid tier piece, €664. These kind of production cost cutting measures and poor quality control builds quality and tolerances are wholly unacceptable at this price point. Other microbands at the €664 price point are getting it correct. They're using micro adjustment clasps or they're using longer, heavier gauge clasps with 5 or 6 micro adjustments, better quality. They're using screw pins in the oyster style bracelet, which doesn't rattle, with tighter tolerances. It needs refinement, so I really cannot recommend it to you for consideration. I think this needs too much refinement and I think that the quality is okay, but I think the value is poor. So I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Xeric Timeline Retrograde Automatic. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you for watching.